This is not a false alarm. The Maizu Pro 7 Plus in front of us right now could be about to turn the smartphone market upside down. Let's get right into the video. So this is a very special phone for quite a few different reasons. It actually has a secondary display on its rear, and when I show you what this allows you to do, you'll be truly amazed. It is also one of the most powerful smartphones around, being the first phone in the world to have the 10-core, 10nm Helio X30 and sporting 6GB of RAM. So in terms of the box itself, this has to be one of the most beautifully packaged smartphones we've ever seen. We've got a matte finished polycarbonate on the bottom, a glossy Maizu logo, and then the top has got this beautiful glossy finish as well. And the contrast really works here. We've got Pro 7 Plus and then Maizu design written right at the top. That is a truly stunning bit of packaging. Okay, so inside the box we have another box, isn't that fun? The smartphone itself is actually slotted in the side of this packaging, which is a pretty unconventional way to do things, and then we have the SIM ejector tool on top. So flipping the package onto its side, there's a little bit more to it than that. One larger box and one smaller box as expected. So let's take a look at the smaller one first. So in here we have instruction manual, we have another manual, and then we have the USB Type-C cable which charges it, along with an alien looking case. We've got a textured finish on the inside, and to be honest, this looks like no case we've ever seen before. Makes me even more curious to try the smartphone. Okay, so what do we have in the larger box? So, a charging adapter, pretty chunky one as well. This definitely has some nice weight to it. And right at the top we have nothing. Okay, there's nothing in that. That's interesting. So now that we've unboxed the phone, we're going to fast forward a few days and I'm going to tell you what I think about it. Let's get started. So the Maizu Pro 7 Plus retails for about $530, making it slightly cheaper than most flagship phones, but hardly budget. So let's start by talking about that secondary display. This is a 1.9-inch 240 by 536 AMOLED panel, which translates into a rather sharp little display. And to get one thing out the way, it's useful. Using this plus the volume down button allows you to pretty much line up the perfect selfie each time, using the phone's rear cameras, which is quite unusual. You can activate it by either tapping twice or turning the phone over, and after getting used to it, it starts to feel quite intuitive. It can tell you the time, the date, the weather, the number of steps you've taken in a given day, but because it's also a touchscreen in its own right, you can even use it to control music. Now unfortunately, whilst it's great with first-party software, it doesn't work so well right now with third-party apps like Spotify. So we'll leave this by saying it's got great unfulfilled potential, but it's still doing pretty well on its own right. Now the camera, and I've got one word here: wow. We've got dual 12-megapixel sensors, and they capture colourful, detailed shots in the blink of an eye. Even zooming in, the pictures ooze detail, and the lens blur mode is fantastic. You get really good edge detection here, which can fail in complex objects, but that's nothing we haven't seen on any other smartphone that does this. Now, one thing I did notice was that the photo refocusing almost never really works. It just ends up blurring both the foreground and the background. Having said that, for the purposes of creating some eye-melting bokeh, the dual cameras do a really good job. Now the front camera has a pretty impressive 16-megapixel sensor, which is great and it captures loads of detail, but it's a little bit confusing considering how much effort the company has gone to make you take selfies with the rear cameras. The 4K video captured on this thing is genuinely excellent. The EIS works pretty well to create some steady handheld footage that rivals the very best smartphone cameras out there. So in terms of design, the phone is comfortable to grip. It's finished in this matte metal material which feels sturdy and premium, but it can get pretty messy pretty quickly. Now both the sides and the corners are a little bit sharper than I would have liked, and they make the phone a little bit difficult to use with one hand, compared to if they were more curved. I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable, but I have felt better. I'm glad to tell you the speaker puts most other smartphones to shame. We've got a high-end audio processing chip, which means the volume is loud, there is plenty of bass. The only thing is, it's quite easy to cover when you're holding the phone in landscape if you're gaming or watching videos, but apart from that, we really can't complain. Now the display here is a Super AMOLED 5.7-inch Quad HD panel. It's bright enough to be viewed outdoors and has some pretty great viewing angles too. We've got some pretty chunky top and bottom bezels, but at least the sides have been trimmed down quite a bit. Now as you expect from this kind of display, colours really pop and the contrast is really good. So let's talk about this shiny new Helio X30. Now MediaTek claims this is about 30% faster than its last generation X20, and they pretty much hit the nail on the head there. So backed up by 6GB of the fastest mobile RAM available, we get an Antutu score of just under 120,000. Now that is hardly breaking any records and puts it on par with smartphones running last year's Snapdragon 820, which is good. considering this is a cheaper flagship than most, but at the same time, it really could be better. Having said that, the UI feels fast, it flies under your fingers, and Maizu has implemented some clever ways to make it even faster. For example, the home button actually doubles as a back button. Pressing it in can turn the screen off as well as turning it on, and we can actually use swipe gestures to initiate multitasking, which works pretty well. With a capacity of 3500 mAh, the battery should be good, but it ends up being about bang on average, and I'm willing to guess that a good part of this is due to that secondary display. Whilst it might become more optimized as future updates roll out, as it stands, you end up getting just over a day of moderate usage. So that's the Maizu Pro 7 Plus, one of the biggest smartphone surprises of this entire year. The second screen shows great promise, the dual camera is among the very best, and the audio quality is completely stellar. It's not packing quite the most powerful internals, but with most aspects of the phone, you'll be having too much fun to care. Thanks a lot for watching, I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll see you guys in the next one.